Everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. As usual, we start off with a mind relaxation. So let's sit back and relax. And just observe. Just observe how the mind has been running all day around. It's like a non-stop engine, like a vehicle that's on the road, just running and running, constantly thinking. It just hasn't come to park yet, exhausting all the fuel, all the energy into thoughts all day long. It's a very important step to come to this awareness of observing the mind. So when we take a minutes break from the mind and just sit back, and for a change, just connect with silence. And silence the mind. Just bring the mind into a parking space, the inner space. Just has the tendency to wander. But we just need to stop and observe the mind. Observe how quickly it takes us of silence and stability into a space of havoc and instability in a matter of a second. Just being aware of this trait of the mind, this feature and function functioning of the mind is a huge step towards your likeness, to a space that each one of us has within, a space of emptiness of the mind, of thoughts. It's just like still water, no waves. The water is just still and serene. We come to connect to the space by only leaving the mind behind. We can access this inner space by dropping everything. Just become leaving everything behind. And what's left is an energy of calmness, of stillness. And few might feel that this is a void and might feel a little strange. Because the mind has been running so much that the moment we bring it to park, in this inner space of stillness, tranquility, serenity, just being blank. Completely disassociated with anything and everything. The only experience and feeling is that of stillness, of silence, of peace. This place is home for the mind. And every now and then, just for a few seconds, if we can connect our mind into this space, while driving, while eating, while doing those daily chores where the mind is not required, we are just functioning through the body. if we consciously just at those moments, while walking from one room to the other, while driving on the roads, if we just bring the mind into this inner space, just silence, stillness. All we're doing is conditioning the mind to come to park. And the benefits of this are known only if we get ourselves to experience this state for a few moments on a daily basis. It's just a matter of creating a new habit, and we awaken to a new self. Being in the world of chaos, surrounded by chaos, we are still within. With a very, very sharp sense of perception of the outside world, and very acute discernment of situations and wise judgments, wise decisions, because we are all acting out of a space of stillness, of stability. Being masters of every situation. It is a great awakening, and it only requires a few moments of making a habit to train the mind to come and park in this. This is everyone's natural state. No effort is required to struggle to experience the stillness. We just haven't connected to this part of ourselves. So every now and then, daily lifestyle, let's constantly remind ourselves to leave everything behind, disassociate from all the external aspects. Just become empty. And enjoy the energy of who I truly am. A being of peace, stillness, calmness. So let's bring back our Vitaly into this session today. And continue with the series. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning to some of you, and good evening to those you are in India. Uh, Today we are going to do a quick revision of what we did last week and on to that. The human mind is amazing. It's the best lawyer I've ever come across. It has the ability to convince us to not do things, and at the same time, if used in a positive way, it has the ability to do things that we thought we are not capable of. So how we use the mind is that. So is there anyone who not use brains and actually tried it in from the previous session? Because the mind will convince you that we'll do it later, and I've seen it, so this is easy, I can do it. But until and unless you actually do it, you won't enjoy it. You will start becoming a brain, and you'll feel it, but you don't know it. The common example is we know how to swim, but you can't learn how to swim by watching a YouTube video. You have to swim to know that you have swimming. Same in programming. If you don't do stuff, you're not going to learn it. So, and you have to be honest with ourselves. Is there anyone who actually what we discussed last week? If not, we'll have to revise everything and act in. So if there's even one person who's done it, that's great. Otherwise, we have to build what we did, and that's okay. But it's very important that we all build what we know, because there's no point saying I attended 16 sessions or 17 sessions, but we haven't actually practiced it. Accordingly, then we will make sure we revise today and build onto it. As I was saying yesterday session, that this is so important, this is practical, this is what you would actually be using it. I don't see any response, and I assume you haven't tried it. That's okay, we'll try it today. But let's do it in a way that let's set up a scenario like how you would do it at work. How does the process begin, right? So we'll simulate that in session. So typically what would happen is uh, if you take the role of, let's say, data scientist or a data engineer, someone would give you the requirements and say, I want you to analyze our sales and inventory data and do some analysis as to it's a stock of particular inventory of the products that we sell. So someone from business, right? Because IT is usually there to support business, right? You could be working for a company which makes handbags. You you could be working for a company that operates an airline. All these companies, they have IT department to help them automate things. So business is someone from the business team who is performing that business for the organization, which is airline tickets, making handbags, could be anything, whatever the nature of the business is. So they come to the data engineer or the data scientist or the data analyst, say, analyze the data and tell me, do we have sufficient stock for the products that we are selling, right? In this case, we'll take an example of a retail company, someone who's selling retail product or CPG good, consumer product groups, day-to-day goods that we consume. So they'll say, tell me, do that analysis. Step one, first you have to understand where that data is. The ask is, analyze, do we have sufficient inventory of the data that is being sold? So yeah, where is the data of all the products that we are sold? And then where is the data that has all the inventory products that we have in stock. Because answer that question, do we have sufficient inventory or stock of the products we are selling? We need those two key pieces of information. First step, you're just analyzing what is the information that is needed to do that analysis, and what are the data sources for information. Where is this information to come from? Is the problem statement clear? Because if the problem statement is not clearly as confusing as the problem. Is anyone able to hear me all right? Can you? Okay, great. So problem statement, you have to analyze the data to answer a business question. Step one, we understand where the data is, and then we can analyze or process the data. So in this case, you would refer to data catalog, which is inventory of all your data as where all the data is, or you'll talk with a system subject matter expert or a SME and ask them where the data is, and they'll tell you this data is in this database, or in this system, that system has a database. But essentially, most of the time, the data is in a database, and then you're creating file extracts out of the database. So you would get a file extract. In the previous few sessions, we've talked about one of the most common file extract is CSV, comma, separated. So we'll start sharing and seeing what that file looks like. Example, comma separated value file, the CSV file. You can see it's actually separated by comma, right? And you can call it CSV, you can call it .text. Doesn't matter. The data, the information in that file is more important. So what I want you to do is create a CSV file. You can create it with 2 or 3 rows. It'll take less than 2 minutes to do it. We are going to create 2 simple files to simulate the file that would be created, creating a file extract out of a database, because that is your starting point for analysis. So we're going to create 2 files. Because typically your sales data would be in your e-commerce framework, where you're going to the portal, you're picking up a product, you're checking in, you're paying for it, and then you hit submit. So all that information from e-commerce framework and all the information would be in the database in the e-commerce framework. And then your inventory would be in an ERP, or enterprise resource planning. ERP software like SAP, Oracle E-Business Suite, Sage. There are many as well. The most common all the retailers use is SAP. So your inventory data would be there in some database from SAP, and you can create a file extract for it, which would have an inventory. Now, in reality, it would have like easily 100 attributes or columns over here. Just here for the sake of simplicity, we want to make sure you know how to create a CSV file. What does it look like? And we'll load it as well. And you know what the CSV file is. Many times, instead of comma, we use another delimiter called a pipe delimiter. Pipe delimiter looks something like this. It's enter your key, actually, or somewhere around. So it looks like that. We call it a pipe. The reason is because if you have a string and if it has a comma in it, when you're parsing it, you're reading row by row, it will be based on that delimiter. So if any of your data has a comma in it, it's a problem. So that's why pipe is a more common delimiter instead of a comma. Both are of type CSV file. It is a separated value. It's called CSV file, but the delimiter in it, what is separating those values, could be a pipe, right? Could be this, could be a tab, different type of delimiter. But you need a way to differentiate that this is one data attribute, this is another data attribute corresponding to the item, and this is the description. Now in this case, right, this is a wrongly formatted file, and I want you to tell me why. Okay, but I want you to create a CSV file, right, which has just 3 or 4 rows in it. Can all of you do that, please? Because if you think you're going to do it later, the evidence is of you, we actually don't do it, right? The mind is able to convince us. So I would strongly suggest do it with me. That's how you will do it. And you will feel confident and wow, I can take a problem statement and I can implement that problem statement because I know exactly what the sequence of steps is, how to analyze it, how to write the code and answer business questions. So can you please type in yes once you've yes. I'm assuming you all know how to create a file. If you go in REPL, if you click on new file, you can type in it. You can call it inventory or whatever you want. Okay. And yes, you can sales ID. You can call it. You can give a description what that product is, and you can get a quantity. You can any product you want. Takes 2 minutes to create. Can I get a confirmation and get it as CSV file? Okay, great, Aditya. Thank you. Good. So you saw how easy it is to create one. So next time when you say someone says, I'm going to send you a CSV file, you know exactly what it is. Okay. We created one CSV file. You can just create 2-3 rows in it. That doesn't matter. We're going to create another one, which is going to have information about what product sell, right? So we can create another CSV file, which has information about what products sold, right? Now, typically, instead of giving details about what product was sold, we will give some ID or some identifier about that product, right? So in this sales ID, what is important is that you have one common identifier to be able to link or join the data. So when I have the inventory, I have the sales ID. The sales IDs give a description about what that inventory is about for which. So in this case, I've got 10 of the quantities of toothbrush, but that toothbrush could be, of a particular brand or company, right? But we are uniquely identifying that product with this identifier called sales side. There's always a need when you're doing any data analysis to know what that identifier is. If I were to do a model and draw this in a data model, so in this case, inventory would be my data, and the data model for it has these attributes: sales ID, description, quantity, right? And I'm going to create another one, which is my sales. That has the sales ID, transaction, and name. I can join that data or link that data with a common identifier, which is sales, which is the product ID or the sales ID. So I need something to be able to join it, to be able to uniquely know which product that am I joining on. You should probably, we could call it as product ID. So let's create another file in which we are going to information which is going to be able to join it. Now, I'm calling it product ID. I could call different. So in my inventory, right, I'm calling it as a city, or I can call it product ID in one, I can call it sales ID in another. But what is important, the value is the same. So this value 123 for this transaction amount corresponds to 123, which is a toothbrush. Yeah. So this value is what, and link those two files is what is needed. So in data, we call it as the primary key and the foreign key, right? So what is linking these records is some kind of a unique identifier, which we call as the foreign key. So this is the primary key, which is the unique identifier in this record. But this identifier, this unique identifier, I'm able to link it up in sales data with this record, and I can join them from. Is this concept of linking clear? How do we link records? We have to identify what is that you identify, which is unique in each of those data sets, right? But it's allowing you to link it. So you have to, out of your analysis, you have to analyze where the data is, look at that file and find out what is that unique identifier. For large complex, you might have to refer to a data model. And the data model, looking at that conceptual data model, you'll be able to know what that key is. Sometimes we have to profile or analyze the data and manually look at it, just like how we look at it right now, and what that key is based on which we'll join the information. Okay. What unique identifier? A unique identifier is uh, is allowing you to identify and make sure every row in your data, you're able to identify it by a unique attribute, which across multiple rows in your data set. So in this case, let's go to inventory.csv or inventory.txt, whatever you created. In this case, toothbrush quantity is different, right? But how do I make sure that they are unique? I need some index or identifier, which makes each row unique. Because I can have, let's say if I were to add another column, or let's say, let's do it for the sake of it. Yeah. Let's say it did this. Attribute in these two rows is common, except for this identifier. If I didn't have this identifier, this would be a duplicate because everything is the same. So this unique identifier now makes this row unique for previous row. One attribute is different. So this unique identifier typically won't be repeated, right? Or even if it's repeated, there will be some attribute which will make every row unique in your data set. Screen is not refreshing. Is it the same problem for everyone? The screen is not refreshing? Is it just for Ashish? Okay, it takes a while to refresh. Okay, is it clear what's a unique identifier? If not, please do not hesitate to say no, because you're learning. So don't give any room for full thoughts. This is difficult. Should I ask this question? Should I not? That's for you to, in order to get the maximum benefit, please do ask a question as and when that question arises in mind. Because the more you hold on, the more it will give room to fear, saying this is difficult. So this is very easy. But any question, we'll make sure you get answered right away. Any questions so far? Okay. So we identify, we look at the data sources, we look at the file, we determine what is the unique identifier. In this case, the unique identifier is the sales ID, and in the file, it was a product ID. But that is what is unique across each of those files and is common across the files. So let's create another one. Let's call it sales data, in which you have a product ID, a transaction amount. You can just call it, I don't have to type, and who was it sold to, because your sales data will have a different set of attributes, but some of the data element common, because this file is saying, what product did I sell, what was who I sold it to. So can we create another CSV file, please? Can I get a confirmation, please, once you're done creating a CSV file? Thanks, Manjeet. Okay. So you've got two files. In real life, these could be very large. They could be a few hundred MB. They could even be TB as well, because you could be looking at historical sales data from 3 to 5 years back, right? Because you want to analyze, the next business question would be, which of these products not have enough in there, but how much should I stock them? So I have to forecasting. So we'll use predictive in the future session, use predictive learning to forecast how many toothbrushes should I have based on how many I sold last year and the year last. Some not clear. You're not able to hear me. This should be better because I've taken my head off, so should be able to hear me better. If it's still breaking up, please let me know. It seems some are still seeing a lag in screen refresh. Okay, let's fix that. Is it better now? Yeah, better now? Okay. So everyone has created files. Okay. Still, if you have problem, please do. I'll switch my computer if that becomes a problem. Okay. So or two CSV files, we've analyzed the data manually or visually by understanding what this data is. Typically, in an organization, the next step would be profiling. What does data profiling mean? You're going to create a profile. So how clean or good this data is. Many times, what happens is there are empty rows in it. Every attribute is filled. You comma as well, right? You can have a data set in which you are just putting and putting there's some value. In this case, you've got a miss value. Are you able to see my screen refresh now? Okay, good. Okay. So you would profile your data to understand if there are any duplicates, if there are any missing values, right? Because the next step in analysis is understanding your data. When you're doing your reporting in tools like Power BI, Tableau, the first step you would do as part of your data analysis is profile your data. The common steps in profiling the data include removing duplicates, filling in missing values, and we'll try to see how to do that as well. Okay, so let's actually start writing code, and let's do it one by one. Okay. So create a main file, go in Replit, create a new file. Let's call it main.python. So you can run it, because when you run it, it's looking for a main.python. If you give it some other name, it will still for it and will give you finding main.python, right? So we'll do import pandas. And then able to read that panda frame. Now, when we are reading it, we are going to read it by reading the CSV file. Okay, so we're going to call it data frame one, pandas library. We imported pandas library, saying PD, and okay, and I'm going to read this file as sales data or my inventory data, and I'm going to print it. So in your previous assignments, you saw we actually had to open a file. We had to then read it line by line and then put it in some array or something. Pandas makes it easier for you where you're not writing code to read the file line by line, but an entire CSV file, putting it in a data structure called a data frame. The F1 is that data frame. And now you can print it with just one line. With these one line, you read the entire file, put it in this array, this two-dimensional array, which we call it as data frame, and we can print it. Okay. I'm showing the screen. Actually, I've written 3 lines of code. So hope you're able to see this. It says import panda data equal to p.read CSV, the name of the file, and then you're printing that data frame. Can all of you type line, please? Okay, maybe there's a difference you think. Okay, let's type it for you in the chat window. I don't know if you can see the chat window. Let me do one thing. I'll connect from another machine. Just give me 1 minute, please. Okay, so it seems like there's a delay or a lag because when you connect to WebEx, it's almost right away. But because we are streaming it to YouTube, there's probably a lag or delay of a minute or two. So, okay, so 3 lines of code. All you're doing is reading that CSV file by that 1 line of code. So can you please type that and make sure you're to read the file that you created into a data frame? Does anyone have any questions? What is a data frame and what this line of code is doing? Yeah, does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, just a small clarification. So, is there a difference when we type in import pandas as opposed to uh, import pandas as PD versus import PD?
Same thing, do it either way. The only difference was syntax move is so when you're in a library in Python, that library has a lot of functionalities. So typically when you say, import the library name and as something, then, you're giving a name to it, or you can import only a subset of that library, right? So you can be explicit, say, include everything in pandas, or you can import a particular set of the pandas library or that library name is. Yeah. Glad Manjeet, you're able to print it. Anyone who's not able to and not able to print it, it's 3 lines of code. You know how to read a CSV file and display it as well. If there's anyone who's struggling with it, please type no or any that you didn't understand.
I think I'm actually to run attribute error, or even we have no attribute in the code.
Okay. So is it so most of the time the common error is we are giving this file, but this file may not exist. Name needs to match within file that you've created, right? So in this case, if you go and say new file, you can create a new file, and then it uses the local path. So it's looking for .python file, they're in the same directory. But if I was to create a subfolder, then I have to give that path over here. So can you verify that the file name which is over here and what you've created, they exactly match? Otherwise, how would Python know which file to create? Because you have two files, right? You have to copy into again read the same file in a different data frame. But how does it know which data frame gets which file? It's based on the file name. So you need to ensure the file name matches, say, read CS. Anshul, what error are you getting? Let's run it to make sure mind code works. My screen is getting stuck. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so I think we didn't type in the names of the library. It didn't know which one it is, so it was giving an error. So if you type in import pandas as PD instead of just saying, because it didn't know PD was pandas, that's why it was giving an error. Is everyone able to run it now? Manju, you're still getting. Yeah, just on the top, import pandas as PD. Is the error resolved? Okay, yeah, wait a minute to insert. For those who's is the one who's able to print the data frame. Okay, good. Okay, good. You saw how easy it is to read the file and load it into a data structure that we are calling it as a data frame, which is nothing but an array. And why is it two-dimensional? Because it just doesn't have one row. If it had one row, it's one-dimensional, but it has multiple rows. Right? So one is the number of rows, the other dimension is the number of columns. So you created a CSV file with multiple rows and multiple columns. You didn't put it in one array because if you were going to put data line by line, row by row, you would put it in an array or a list. Right? And rather than plenty of examples usable. How to read the file and load it line by line or row by row into an array. Here, data frame is different. You're loading all the rows into one structure called data frame. Okay, so we're going to read the other file that you created, which has the sales information, right? And we're going to put it in another data frame. So I need to put something different like DF, but I'm going to use the other file and then be able to print it. So now I've loaded my data and I'm able to run it. So I see all the data that is there in these CSV files. So problem statement is, do I have sufficient inventory of products that I'm selling? In order to do that, we identified what that is, we identified a unique identifier that would allow us to link the data, and we loaded that data in a data frame. And we loaded the data in a data frame by importing Panda library and using Python function read. So we don't have to open the file, read it line by line. We put it in the of it in a data frame. As simple as that. Ever able to load this data frame? Can I get confirmation from anyone that you loaded both the files as data frame? Good, Manju. How about everyone else? Everyone will load from two files into two separate data frames. And you're able to display that data as well. Can I get in from the rest of the team, please? Besides Manjul, everyone else, you're able to read the two files into data frame? Okay, Manjit. What about rest of you? Is anyone who's not able to do it or struggling or has a problem? Is anyone who's working on it? Confirmation, so we'll keep moving. I want to make sure you're not left behind. We good to proceed? Okay, I assume you guys know how to proceed ahead. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we need to join this data. Now, there are various ways we could have done this assignment. One is if this data was residing in the same database, we could have done this analysis without Python by using SQL. So SQL is structured query language, which allows you to query your data in a table in a database. So the syntax for it is pretty much common across multiple databases. There's a standard of body called ANSI, ANSI. So if you write ANSI SQL, then that SQL would be the same and you can run it in any database. But sometimes different database providers like Microsoft uses its own version of SQL called T-SQL, whereas Oracle will use its own version of SQL called PL/SQL. So there are different flavors of SQL, but the common, which is a standard, is ANSI, ANSI, ANSI SQL. So if you write an ANSI SQL query, and if your Databricks is ANSI SQL compliant, you can just write that query and reuse that query in a different type of database as well. So we could have done this by joining the data using SQL. In the SQL terminology, the common terminology is you have different type of joins. Anytime when you're giving an interview, this question will be asked. So it's very important you understand it. Linking or joining two data sets. One data set, let's take it. I've got inventory data. I've got certain set of rows in it. Yeah. And then I've got my sales data, which has a certain set of rows in it. The number of rows in each of the data sets is varying. I could be selling more of a particular product, the same to multiple people, right? So my sales data would have a lot more type of data than my inventory data. So I'll have more type of rows. Yeah. So the number of rows is not going to be common. You're going to have a different, I can sell the same product or different product to Mukesh, right? And I can have a different transaction amount. So what is important to understand is we need to know which of the data rows based on that unique key, which is common across the two data joining sets. How can we link those data elements? Our problem statement was, right, do we have sufficient quantity of the products that we are selling? Right. So in this case, let's look at my product, right? This is the product that I was selling, right? And I have one, two, three, I've sold it to twice. So I sold two of these to Mukesh. This was a bad, right? Because it didn't have a transaction amount, but I did sell some. Okay, and I sold it to a different user. So this 1, 2, 3 product, I sold it to Mukesh, and 1, 2, 5, I sold it to Mukesh. I didn't list how many of them I sold. So I'm assuming I put it 1, right? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 5. Do we have enough quantity? Yeah, we've got 10 and we've got 5, right? So we should have it. But I'm doing this analysis visually, manually. If I had hundreds, thousands of these products, I cannot do this manually. I have to write some code which I can visualize and be able to answer that question. So what we learned is that joining key to be able to see if that data 1, 2, 3, that key is there in the sales data, and if it is there in my inventory data, then I can join those records and see what it looks like. So if I need to do that, the type of join that you would do is find the rows of data into data sets which have the common unique identifier. The unique identifier is unique in each of the data sets, but find the rows of the data, which is the intersection of the two data sets, or identifier which is there in both the data set. I want to find records which satisfy that criteria. So that we call it, in the SQL terminology, we call it as the inner join. So we need to use pandas, take these two data frames, which is equivalent to a table in a database, and I need to do a SQL join and SQL inner join. So the syntax for it, we will type it and see how to do that inner join. But what should we be expect out of that import? Yeah, we need to know what that out should look like. Okay, so I'm going to say pandas dot merge. What am I going to merge? Data frame 1, data frame 2. Now this order is important. The order, this is my data frame, this is my right data frame. I can swap order, I'll get different results, right? I'm merging these data frames, or based on which key? The sales, right? Now this key based on first data frame. So in my first data frame, I'm calling it as demo. So I have a product ID. Okay. So I should say product ID. And what type of a join is it? It's based on an inner join. And you'll see how are we joining it? You can have an outer join, you can have a left join, you can have a right join. So the first data frame is your left data frame. The second one is a right data frame. And the type of join is inner, which is find the rows that are common for that identifier across both the data frames. Is that clear? This is very important. What are the different type of joins, and what does that different type of a join mean when you apply it across the data frames? Understood. So what do you think should be the outcome when we run this code? And can you type this as well, so that way you can do the analysis on your data set that you. So is everyone able to merge the data frames? So it needs key, and it needs to be common on that name. Otherwise, I'll have to say on data frame dot sales ID, and I have to specify that keys. But because I'm not doing that, and to keep it simple for now, I'm making this as a comment across both the files. Otherwise, it gives me an error. So when I run this, what I see is that I get the rows which had the same sales ID in both the data frames. Now, in this case, the left and right won't make much difference because I'm looking at the intersection, rows that are common in one versus the other. But when I change this type of joins, then what is the left data frame and what is the right data frame? The first and the second order is important. Everyone do the merge operation? Can I get a confirm, please? I'm running into difficulties doing the merge. Are you able to hear me okay? Please acknowledge if you can hear me and you're able to do the merge operation on the data frame. Okay. What error is it giving, Manju? And just make sure the key is common across both the files. I was getting that error because I had a different name. So you need to have this unique there, which is linking the two data sets. That needs to have the same name. There's a way you can get around with it, but for simplicity, for now, do the concept of how merge occurs, keep it same. Can anyone confirm who's been able to do it? Or where you're stuck, please ask a question. Take advantage of the interactive forum. Or type a question. Still, you're on the mobile phone, so I'm not sure how you do the replit exercise on the mobile phone. So those who are actually doing it on the computer, please do it and tell me. This is opportunity for you to actually do it. You can try it later on, but please do it. Okay, even if I have one information, good enough. So Manjul, are you able to merge it and actually see an output? Okay, good. Yeah, it needs the same thing. Good. So if one of you is able to finish it, I assume the rest would be able to do it as well. So this way you can join the data set. Now you need to have fun what I mean by fun, instead of saying in, see what happens when you say left. So in this case, the order of the data frame matters. When you say left, then in that case, it's going to take all the rows which are the left data frame, right? It's really doing any join, but it's saying, show me all the rows which are there in the left data frame. And so you can say right, right? So play with it, understand and analyze the data. The whole idea is having fun and just playing with it to understand how does the merge work. And labs, we'll see how to visualize this data then. And you can have more fun. You can actually add some pre-processing on how to remove duplicates, to fill missing values and so on. That's typically what we would do. But at least now you know how to merge two data frames, because that's key intuition. You know pandas, the expectation is you know how to merge data sets. So I hope with this one line, very simple assignment, you're able to do the hands-on and feel confident that you know how merge works, what is an inner join, what is a left join. Any questions regarding today's assignment? No questions? Everyone feels comfortable and confident with doing a join on data frames? Good. Congratulations for doing your first pandas assignment. You're now able to run the code and actually see how that merge works. If no questions, I'll hand it over to Sir Rajiv for another mind empowering technique. If any questions, please do ask, unmute yourself, or put your question in the chat window. Or if you're running into any difficulties with the 3 or 4 line code that you've written today. It's called inner join. So in the interview, they will ask, what are the different types of joins you've used when merging data set? So inner join is the intersection of the rows of data which are there in both the data sets, corresponding to that unique identifier or that joining key, or we call it as the foreign key or the primary key. So the sales ID was common across the data sets. Wherever that sales ID was there in the sales data and the sales ID was there in the inventory, for all those row data, the ID was matching to get result in this result set. So the question was, do I have sufficient quantity of inventory? I need to see which of those products that were sold are there in the inventory first. So when I look at the outcome, you can actually see showing all the products, right? It's saying 120 toothbrush and so on. And right, I can actually see it. It's because in the screen, but it has all the columns to it. So now I can join the data. So if you've got normalized data sets, you can denormalize them by joining it as well. Okay. Yeah, good. So Manjul, thanks for printing your outcome. So Aditya, are you clear? Join is nothing but finding the rows which have the same identifier and printing that out. When you change this how type of join, you'll get a different response. So interview, they will ask you what are the different type of joins. The most is the inner join. So this way, you know how you can do SQL type analysis using Python data frames in pandas. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll hand it to Sister Rocky. Yeah, it's the same concept in structured data. So you saw this was relational data, right? And the relationship was established by this unique identifier, this key, in this case, the sales ID. So we were able to join the set that key, which is the sales ID. You could have, if both this data was in a table in the same database, you could have joined by being able to join it with the database. But many times this data would come from different databases. So in that case, you have to do this data outside database. Typically, you would do it in the reporting tool like Power BI or Tableau. Manjit, is okay, good. Any questions? This is very basic and fundamental. It's very important. It's not important writing 10 lines of code. What is important is you wrote 3 lines or 4 lines, but you understand the power of those 4 lines because that becomes foundational for you to do a lot of complex things. Okay. Aditya, you're good? Okay, good, Sandhya. Okay, so please practicing it. Now you've got your own data frame. Play with it. Have fun. Enjoy it. Any questions you can post it in the WhatsApp group as well. So you don't have to wait this week. Success, how you're feeling about it. You can share that with others as well because yours motivate others. So feel free to share opinions, what you've done, what doesn't work, and you'll get all the help you need. Good, Manjeet. It's fun. It's Python can be very rewarding if you know what you're doing. And Pandas is the first step towards that rewarding experience. Okay. Siski, if you want to share another mind relaxation or empowering technique, thank you very much.
So let's go with a mind empowerment technique. The strongest empowerment is defense. One can only be good. There is a very active and strong defense mechanism already in place. Even in old ages and historically, forts were built in a way that they wouldn't be easily be able to be captured by enemies. All the way from entry into the fort to the building up of the fort. Every act of the construction and design was such that it would make it a challenge for an enemy to enter the fort. Likewise, our mind can be our own enemy and our own friend. And we've learned thus far that my mind and I are entities. I am not the mind. I am not my thoughts. Mind is my faculty. Mind generates thoughts. I witness and experience the thoughts. I am not the thought. So I need to build a fortress between myself thoughts, the mind. It's a very subtle realization, because all day long we are so consumed by thoughts that we do not realize this subtle separation of me, I, who's experiencing the thoughts, who's feeling the thoughts. And now we go to the next step of realization that I have to keep some distance between the thoughts and myself. It may seem complex at the beginning, but once this concept is grasped and understood, it is very, very empowering technique. So I am this peace of inner peace, of stillness, and the mind is a layer around me, and it's constantly in thoughts, which is okay. But I, the observer of these thoughts, one who witnesses these thoughts, have the choice on which thought power to and feel, and which thought to reject and distance from. But I can only do that if I have some distance, safe distance between me and the mind. The more I am able to witness my mind and observe, the more this distance is conscious. And that distance that we as our first step is our shield, our force from our own mind. Because anything that brings our stage down emotionally, mentally, it is because we think and feel we've taken that thing inside the mind. And if anything enters our mind without any filter, without any shields, then it is bound to affect us and bring us down, because we gave it the power of free entry into our. So empowerment means first understanding how and what is the root cause. What is the starting point of the beginning of us not feeling good? What is the starting point of anxiety? What is the starting point of stress? We are great engineers. We can debug code. We just have to apply the same skills to debug the mind. Where does start and initiate? When does stress start? Pick that seed, that root cause, the point, and the quick, the sooner we detect the starting point, the easier it is to build a shield around thoughts that are created, that are beginning to cause or anxiety. We learn programming languages, but we invest very little in learning how the mind, what are those bugs of the mind constantly bring us. Only we understand us, and answers all lie within. We just have to press F5, the debug mode. So empowerment really means understanding the origin of every thought, of every feeling, of every experience within, and then processing why we felt that way, why that thought originated, what was the foundational need we had that originated. For example, if we are insulted or humiliated, we feel bad. What is the foundational need that did? The need of being respected. Now we can't control the respect us, but we can manage our own inner need of being respected by holding our high self-esteem all the time and not letting that self-respect of who I am at any point be devaluated by anyone's words, behaviors, or actions. So holding my fort of respect strong for myself, feeding thoughts of self-respect to myself, keeps me empowered and unaffected by humiliations and insults from outside. Maybe for a few seconds, my mind will fluctuate, but I immediately would understand that it doesn't matter what someone says or does. What matters is how I see myself, how high I hold myself in my own thoughts, in my own vision for myself. That no one can change. And that individual walks with high esteem even in the face of humiliation. That individual is unaffected by insults, by slander, and that image, that individual has a high image of oneself only helps us because we have stayed beyond the influence of anyone's version's behaviors. Because everyone is free to act the way they choose to. And I am empowered to hold and respect myself, stay unaffected by anything outside. So, what is my defense mechanism? My self-esteem, thoughts of high self-respect for myself. What mechanism? Being aware not to let any negative thoughts enter my inner space. I am so well guarded. I am so aware, so heightened consciousness that I do not allow entry of my own mind, enemy, my mind, inside my space of high esteem. Because this energy is so powerful that negative energy holds no strength to sustain itself in the energy of positivity and high vibrational frequency of self-esteem. Negativity dissolves and fades when we are vibrating high. So it was a very, very methodological process of debugging. We understood the need, the core need of every individual. Respect, peace, happiness. Whenever these foundational needs are violated, it brings our stage down emotionally and mentally. And the only thing control is to fill these needs by ourselves, by creating high thoughts of positivity. So our defense mechanism is creating high energy positive thoughts. And allowing anyone to enter and pollute the inner space. Just the mere realization of this process and putting it into practice once and experiencing the benefits and my energy transforms us into empowered individuals. It's how we stay negative in the mind to high vibrational positive thoughts. the energy of which is so high that no negative thought can stay in that energy. It burns and dissolves away. The soul lying hidden within each individual. All we have to do is tap into it and experience it and use it. So let's take this as homework for the week. We all are presented with challenges from people, from situations, from family, from work, all over the place. Let's vibrate higher in a much higher positive purity and let everything, all negativity or pollutants just dissolve naturally. No need to struggle, need to battle. Just let things dissolve naturally. By taking the step of vibrating higher. That's self. And we have all the necessary potent capability to experience it, to put it into practice. So let's conclude our session today with this thought that I'm a powerful being and nothing can stand in front of me if I don't wish to stand. If I don't give power to anything except my own higher state, everything else will dissolve naturally, effortlessly. So it is not at the time of the battle that we get these. It is throughout the day we consciously vibrate in these thoughts. When the enemy comes forth, situations that come forth, we already have the toned muscles and the inner strength to face it and to let it accept defeat. So defeat is of the negative situation, not us. And it really happen by thinking powerful thoughts throughout the day. I am a powerful being. And I have whatever it takes to be the perfect individual that contributes to society, to family, world in its own unique way. I am unique, I am perfect. And whether someone recognizes my talent or not, I myself recognize it. So I give respect to myself for who I am. And that's myself, that hour. Someone outside recognizes it or not, I recognize it. So let's wrap up today's session with this thought and put it into practice. Thank you everyone for joining. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. And wish you a great week. Thank you.
आदित्य आदित्य मैंने ना आज जो बोला ना उसने